Good morning. Today is it's for the Pentecost, the 14th Sunday after Pentecost, and I thought we've had issues with doing live service in the meadow due to our inadequate internet system here in Douglas Hall. So what I thought I'd do is read the gospel for today and then do the sermon from here and put it on YouTube. And if for some reason you cannot stay or get on the live service on Sunday at 9:30 in the meadow or on Zoom, you can go straight to this. And you simply go to YouTube. You'll probably have to download YouTube, and then just put right in Rev, R-E-V, no dot, just R-E-V, Michael McManus, and this will show up in a whole bunch of former sermons. So anyhow, here we are today, the gospel according to Matthew. It's Matthew 18:15 through 20. So Jesus said, "If another member of the church sins against you, go and point out the fault when the two of you are alone. If the member listens to you, you have regained that one. But if you are not listened to, take one or two of the others along with you, so that every word may be confirmed by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. If the member refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if the offender refuses to listen even to the church, let such a one be to you as a Gentile or a tax collector. Truly I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly I tell you, if two of you agree on earth about anything you ask, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there among them." So I read some great commentary, a sermon by Reverend Kathleen Walker. Let me make sure that's correct. Reverend Kathleen Walker. And she starts out with a story which, goes right to the heart of where I'm from in Florida. She says the ocean is one of the most beautiful of all God's creations. And if you sit on the beach, you can never see the end, where the ocean ends. The horizon just goes on and on, right? So there's a lot to be learned from sitting and just looking and being at the ocean. And if you're present at high tide, you'll notice that the waves come crashing into the shoreline, and that it's greatly increased, of course, with torrential storms like hurricanes. At high tide, the ocean seems to command your attention. It is usually loud and roaring. And if you're in the water when the tide is at its peak, you will be pushed and nudged back to shore. And then conversely, of course, at low tide, the ocean can be generally calmer as the waves kind of come in, but the tide's going out. And this allows you to sometimes have quiet, deep reflection. But there's something she didn't say. There's something called the King of Tides, the King Tides now. And I never heard it as a kid, but it's when the moon is set in a certain place and the gravitational pull is the greatest, and it allows even higher tides during high tide. And to be honest, 2020 this year has been the year of king tides. The waves just seem crashing on our shore for most of the year, since March, of course. And then we've also been pushed into our shelters. Well, we have found some new life in these type of meetings on YouTubes and on and email and more digital. And we found that, unfortunately, though, some waves of this king tide have overtaken some people, including major loss of life or deep sickness due to the pandemic. For others, the wave have crashed at the shoreline of social equality. in our country that so long has only been determined to respond during what we could call low tide. So as we wait for return to whatever normal is, or new normal, or the post-pandemic new normal, God isn't extending an invitation to us to respond to those things which we can change, and those things over which we do have some control. And I'm kind of alluding to the prayer of St. Francis that we'll say at the end of this. God, give me courage to reach out to those things I can change. And we may not know when we can return to in-person worship. I'll talk about that at another time. But we can attend to some of these urgent matters that are just screaming for our attention. Now, many folks are currently searching for a roadmap leading to becoming the beloved community, something that our presiding bishop talks about, the beloved community. This vision where all people may experience dignity and abundant life and see themselves and others as beloved children of God. I was reminded the other day by one of our parishioners, wise parishioners, that said, remember when our Bishop Kim came for confirmation a good year ago, said, you are all beloved children of God. And she said it 3 times. Now, I didn't remember that, but thank God people have a better memory than me, and I let her preach to me a little bit the other day, which is very comforting. So there really is no easy path to this beloved community, this vision where people live in, abundant life and see themselves as beloved children of God. Especially now, sometimes the conversations that we have are very difficult. And some people struggle to say when they've been hurt or when they've been offended. Sometimes people just walk away without ever expressing their hurt because of actions of others. But when the conversation does not yield the desired result for the first time, there's a tendency just to shrug it off and simply give up and go along your way. That's what we would call sins of omission, and we say that in our confession. The challenge is that when those conversations are avoided, they can leave behind a toxic culture that permeates a community needlessly. Yet we never know which incident, after evading a conflict, will trigger the crashing of waves again on our shore or our beach. So today's gospel from Matthew challenges us to become involved in tough conversations. We're called to bravely stand up for what is right and against what is wrong, and to raise our voices. And if needed, this roadmap that Matthew lays out provides strategies for when conflicts develop. This particular passage is thought to be a conversation that was created by the apostle and not by Jesus, because we don't think Jesus said these exact words, in that Jesus never spoke about the church or resolving conflicts in the church. Another question, ask God when we get to the true promised land. But rather, this text applies to conflicts after Jesus' death, when the church had issues, and Matthew is speaking to his community, or whoever wrote the gospel, Matthew, speaking to his community about resolving conflict. The message, however, is central to understanding how to stay in conversation at the most challenging times. It also requires a willingness to both talk and listen. Both talk and listen. Most people are very, they want to talk, but they don't want to listen. And so they don't get the other side. Neither practice is easy, yet it's possible to get closer to this goal in every attempt. So what Kathleen Walker is calling us to do amid a national pandemic, we should summon up the courage to address systematic racism, look at the root causes, and find solutions that will reorder how we live together into this beloved community, this harmonious and loving community. So this is a remarkable moment for the church to model what brave conversations that lead to healing look like. But Jesus understood that healing often takes some risks. Every time he dined with a tax collector or a Gentile, people were enraged. When he touched the young man that was on a funeral pyre because the widow was there crying, he touched, like I said, touched a dead body, and that was just verboten for the Jews because that was, it's unkosher to touch a body, a dead body. So, and every time he sat with Gentiles, that was, it's not kosher. And every time he hung with tax collectors who were, they were Jews that were working for the Romans and taking money, and sometimes taking more than they were supposed to, or lining their pockets, let's say, skimming. Jesus sat with all those people. So, but he continued always to preach about love for one another. So people of color have been members of the Episcopal Church, the Anglican Church, for many years. What if the church doors were open to everyone? What if we really did say all are welcome and then really open the doors to those who are out there? And why is full inclusion still elusive? For those who feel that the church has sinned against them, Matthew recommends that such sin be called out, first privately and then increasingly in public formats. So we're at that inflection point now where there's a real urgency. It can be done even at a time when in-church or in-person gatherings are at a minimum, like we are now. We can challenge ourselves to be creatively determine how to facilitate these dialogues within our conversation, within our congregation, and without. So truth-telling creates vulnerability and sometimes leads to confrontations, or as Reverend Walker says, carefrontations. Carefrontations where you're trying to resolve something even before you go in. Just getting to that, even to the low tide point where we love our neighbors as ourselves, we have to be willing to risk pain and suffering to get there. We recently read the story of Matthew in the gospel where Jesus bids Peter to step out in faith into the seas that were rumbling and tumbling and to come to him. And although the waves were crashing and tumbling, Jesus still beckoned Peter. So in the same way, Jesus beckons us, his contemporary disciples, to step out in faith to eradicate this unlawful inequity. Again, back to the goal. The goal of becoming the beloved community is not relegated to one or a handful of congregations. There must be a focused and concerted effort for everyone to engage. We all know that past cannot be undone, but the goal of studying and revisiting history is to help us understand what happened and learn from those mistakes. Jesus, though, is inviting us to dismantle this sin once and for all, so that the afflicted may be healed forever. In closing, I pray the prayer attributed to St. Francis, and it's on the second to last page in your bulletin this week. And I recommend maybe you cut it out and put it on your mirror so you see it every morning and look at it. Challenge you to do that. So let us say it together. Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let us sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is discord, union. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Grant that we may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen. And thank you again to Reverend Kathleen Walker. God bless you.